Greetings builders! How was your first day of Necropolis? I hope everyone is doing great and gearing up for endgame. Today I have a very special video for you, and that's because you guys were responsible for it. As you know, last week I released 12 starter builds and asked you guys on the community tab about your favorites. Now, thousands of votes later, here are the results. The first 3 builds to battle for your votes were the Archer Skeletons, the Arc Totems and the Venom Gyre. As you can see, the Arch Skeletons rose victorious. Now let's talk about the winner, the Archer Skeletons Guardian with the Templar class. I'm sure that at this point you guys already know the Mage Skeletons build. Now with the new Transfigured Gems we also have the Archer Skeletons. They are super fast, strong and even got an amazing buff for this new league. To list the pros of this build, I would start with how balanced it is. Unlike the Mage Skeletons, this build has a much smoother clear speed and can do even more damage to bosses. This build also is not complicated to put together, we only need one mandatory unique item that is pretty cheap. Above all, as a Guardian, we still have 3 damage auras for free and a minion that takes 20% of the damage for us. Now, to list the cons, I'll start saying that even though this build is still very tanky and safe, it's not as tanky as the Mage Skeleton staff version because it has less block chance. But don't worry, if you mind your position, it will be hard for you to die. As for budget, this build is pretty cheap. You can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfort with advanced 3 yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines, but you can totally do it with less. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Lionized Vision Armor that already grants the peer support and allows us to have one more support gem for our skeletons. For clear speed I'll give it 9 out of 10. We have many Archer Skeletons firing many arrows with high attack speed, and unlike the Mage Skeletons version that uses the spell Echo, here we can easily cast 4 skeletons at a time in different locations and increase a lot their angle of destruction. The boss damage is amazing, deserves 9 out of 10. As you can see on the gameplay, this build was capable of destroying big bosses in just a few seconds even before the recent buffs. For this survivability I'll give it 9 out of 10. As a minion build you stay far from danger while they tank and kill everything for you, it's a very safe playstyle. But this build also counts with over 90,000 effective HP because of high armor block chance and a minion that takes 20% of the damage for you. I only took 1 point out because since we're not using the staff like the Mage Skeletons version, we end up with less block chance and effective HP. Next, you guys had to choose between the Flicker Strike and the Lightning Strike builds, and this time the Lightning Strike destroyed his opponent. So it's time to talk about him, the Lightning Strike Trickster with the Shadow class. Lightning Strike is an awesome skill that used to be on top of the meta, but went down after a couple of nerfs. Now with the new returning projectile support gem, it's back with more power than ever. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. Besides a strong melee hit, Lightning Strike also creates many lightning projectiles that run on the floor, killing every enemy on its path. Besides that, this build also counts with the Trickster Ascendance to be super fast and tanky. It has 7 frames charges for extra damage and speed and a lot of defensive layers. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to mind is that this build needs a good elemental call to work properly, but don't worry, it's easy to buy one from other players. As for budget, this build is not expensive at all. You can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfort with advanced 3 yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. For clear speed, I'll give this one 10 out of 10. As mentioned before, you have 7 frames charges and a huge effective elusive that grants this build a lot of movement speed. Besides that, Lightning Strike creates many projectiles that run on the floor, exploding many enemies that aren't even close to you yet. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. With the new returning projectile support gem, you deal a lot more damage to bosses. This one is an awesome boss killer. For the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build has over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and even a trickster buff that causes you to take 40% less damage. Above all, you are immune to freeze and stuns. Following, you have to pick from Freezing Pulse Totems, Cyclone of Tumult, and Mage Skeletons. This won the most balanced battle I've ever seen here, and the winner was the Mage Skeletons. Now let's get to know this amazing Mage Skeletons Guardian with the Templar class. I'm sure you all remember that to transform our regular skeletons into mage ones, you used to need a unique jewel called Dead Reckoning. Well, that's changed because of the new Transfigure gems. Now, we have the Summon Skeletons of Mage's gem that naturally summon mage skeletons without the need of any mandatory unique item and for a much lower price. This means that mage skeletons become an even better starter than before. To list the pros of this build, I would start with survivability. With the Guardian Ascendancy, you get almost 75% chance to block attacks and spells, a huge life regeneration, and the new Sentinel of Radiance that takes 20% of the damage for you. All of that combined with the fact that this is a minion build that is very safe to play, because you stay behind your minions and they can kill enemies from a big distance. Also, with the new Elemental Relic, you and your minions get 3 damage auras totally for free, resulting in a great boss damage. Now, to list the cons, I will start saying that Mage Skeletons don't move, they feel more like a totem build. For that reason, you need to keep resummoning them while clearing maps. The Guardian Ascendance also doesn't get a speed buff from Flash Offering like the Necromancer, so it's a little bit slower. Above all, when comparing to the Necromancer, this version also doesn't get that awesome 30% to all elemental resistance for you and your minions. This might cause your zombies and specters to die from elemental damage if you don't look for minion resistance on your rare gear. As for budget, this build is cheaper than ever. You can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 50 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 120 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 Divines, but you can totally do it with less. For clear speed, I'll give it 8 out of 10. You have many skeletons firing many projectiles at a high cast speed rate. I took 2 points out because the mage skeletons don't move and you need to keep resummoning them, and also because the Guardian does not get the Flash Offering speed buff like the Necromancer. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. With the new Returning Projectile Support gem, 100% of projectiles will hit enemies twice, but since it's not as powerful as the nerfed anomalous faster projectiles, I took 1 point out. For the survivability, I'll give it 10 out of 10. This build has a big load of defensive layers such as high armor, 75% chance to block attacks and spells, a minion that takes 20% of the damage for you, and since it's a minion build, you are far from danger all the time. Finally, the battle was between the Vow Ice Shot, the Infernal Flicker Strike, and the Lightning Arrow. And this time you guys gave the prize to the Lightning Arrow build. And now let's take a look at this shockingly good build, the Lightning Arrow Deadeye with the Ranger class. Even though Vengeance Cascade was nerfed, the introduction of the Returning Projectile Support gem kept this build super fast and strong, which caused most of players to choose it. During last league, I released the Lightning Arrow guide that needed some expensive unique items, and this time I'm going to make it different. On this guide, you'll find 2 versions of this build, a budget and a complete one. Each one has its own POB and passive tree, so you can start this build even on a low budget and upgrade it later. To list the pros of this build, I'm not sure if I would start with its clear speed or boss damage, because both are amazing. This build is also not complicated to put together, I totally recommend you to try it out. Now, to list the cons, I would say that this build is not very tanky. Even though you have some defensive layers, it's important to take advantage of your ranged attacks and stay far from danger. If you don't mind your position, you might die. About the budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 Divines. But if you go for the complete version, you need to invest at least 4 more Divines. On the budget version, you don't need any mandatory unique item for this build. On the other hand, the complete version needs the Lionized Fall and the Thread of Hope unique jewels. They are expensive but grant a huge boost to your damage. For clear speed, I'll give it 10 out of 10. You fire many projectiles with high attack speed and those projectiles return to you, pierce enemies, bounce off walls and go everywhere. No one can survive that. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. Using 2 Vow Lightning Arrows plus your ballistas on bosses will kill them so fast that you won't believe it. For the survivability, I'll give this build 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and you can kill enemies from a good distance, this build isn't very tanky. If you don't mind your position, you might die. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you keep having lots of fun on the Necropolis League. As always, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!